I still remember the way he walked in that day. Mark had a smile that did not fit the boardroom. I remembered how the boardroom had felt smaller, how he pushed the chair back with a confident hand and tapped the table like he owned the whole room. His voice filled the room when he said they were optimizing. I looked down at my coffee and felt my mouth go dry. Before I could stand, HR rose and handed me a letter. Right there, in front of my team, I was fired. Mark introduced Sophie as his handpicked head of operations. Sophie smiled like she already owned the place. People shuffled papers. I packed a small box with my mug and a plant. As I left, Mark laughed softly and told me to look for other opportunities that still values my level of expertise. I shut my car door feeling small and angry. Then I noticed a pale yellow post. It stuck to the corner of the box. It had a time and a single word in hurried ink. Tuesday. The note felt like a secret. I sat in my car and read it again. Why would someone mark my box with a time? The note made my heart pound. I drove home with the paper clenched in my fingers. That night I could not sleep. The word Tuesday echoed. At home, I opened the termination letter with hands that trembled. The legal wording was neat and cold. I expected reasons but found a coffee-stained receipt folded inside. The small strip of paper smelled faintly of office coffee. Someone had scribbled on it in a shaky hand, "Call Raj." Raj had been a quiet VP who was moved out last year. I rubbed my thumb over the ink and felt a cold knot in my stomach. Why would Raj's name be on my box? I tried to call, but my thumb missed a number. I dialed anyway. His voice answered on the second ring, low and scared. He whispered, "You weren't supposed to get that." He said to check my archived work drive for a folder named Project Alpha. I felt foolish but hopeful. I booted my old laptop and started searching through backups. The house felt too quiet. The cursor blinked like a heart monitor. I found a hidden folder with roadmap drafts and an old Slack thread between Mark and me praising the plan. I smiled for a second. Then I scrolled and found a screenshot with Sophie's last name on an expense approval. The date was the week before my firing. Raj's voice on the phone was thin. "Mark is buying loyalty," he said in a whisper. He told me about secret consulting pools and friendly vendors. Raj warned me not to trust people who smiled too much. He told me to look for Project Alpha documents and be careful. I told him I had found a screenshot with Sophie's name. He sighed and said that matches what I feared. He said he had grabbed a server snapshot before they locked him out. He had sent it to me. I opened the file slowly like I might break it. In the snapshot were emails between Mark and a vendor who never picked up the phone. The invoices said strategy workshops, but the dates lined up with luxury hotel stays. I stared at names of hotels I had seen on travel blogs. There was no business address for the vendor, only a rented mailbox shared by other strange companies. My phone buzzed with an unknown number that said, "Stop digging." The message made my fingers cold, but I could not stop. Raj told me to be careful. He said, "If you dig, you will see how deep they buried it." I went back to the company to speak with HR, hoping for a clear answer. HR said everything was by the book and corporate had made the decision. The official voice was smooth and slow. A junior HR coordinator named Emily pretended to sort files, but slid a PDF across the desk while no one watched. She whispered, "They're marking payments as external." Her eyes looked like she wanted to cry. She said they had to hide payments from the board. The PDF had internal invoice lines flagged as consulting and an audit code I had never seen. One column listed a one-word payee matching Sophie's maiden name. Emily mouthed, "Don't be seen with me," and ducked away. Her hand trembled. I took a picture of the screen quickly. The files looked like small secrets on the company server. I thanked her, and she walked off like a ghost. I felt electric with worry and hope. This meant the company was hiding money. It meant my firing might be part of something bigger. I kept walking through the quiet offices wondering how many people knew and how many pretended not to. Raj sent me a larger snapshot he had saved. It had emails between Mark and an unfamiliar vendor. The vendor never answered calls, but the invoices showed large sums. The invoice descriptions were vague: strategy workshops, executive hospitality. I cross-checked the dates and saw they matched luxury hotel bookings and dates when Mark had claimed he was on work retreats. I dug further. The vendor's registration address led me to a mailbox rental. 3 other company names used that same address. When I traced those companies, they all linked to one name. My stomach turned. I wondered who was pulling the strings. My phone buzzed with an unknown number again. The text said, "Stop digging." I sat on my kitchen floor and tried to breathe. I made a choice then. If people were hiding money in fake invoices and shell companies, I would not let them bury it. I would not be a punchline for a corporate joke. I called Raj back, but his line went straight to voicemail. The quiet on the other end felt full of danger. Money was low and stress was high. So I took a temp job at a competitor to pay bills and keep my head clear. On my second day, a message popped into my direct messages from Olivia, the compliance officer who had once worked on our audit team. Olivia said, "We saw a leak. Get a lawyer." Her words were crisp and careful. She told me she had a list of transaction IDs that could be used against the company, but warned that if I used them, I would be labeled a whistleblower. I felt the weight of that word. Olivia then sent a screenshot with one line highlighted. Tuesday, wire, REF 2247. My breath caught. The same word from my post-it and the same code were linked. She added that she could help if I kept quiet and trusted her. I asked how she knew. She said she could not explain in messages and asked to meet. Her message ended with a note, "Be careful who you tell." I sat at my new desk and realized I was in the middle of something that could ruin many lives, mine included. I reached out to the accounting team and found Priya, a junior accountant who had been quietly reassigned. She sounded scared when she responded. She sent me a voice memo that made my blood run cold. In it, she listed an offshore account and said the phrase, "sweep at midnight." I thought of a river of money moving in the dark. When I went to her old desk, it looked like she had been erased. Her laptop was gone. Her sticky notes were torn. The monitor had a single leftover sticky with a username, SR. The same letters were on invoices I had seen. I tried her number, but it was disconnected. I felt like I had reached a blocked door. I printed the voice memo and held it in my hands until the paper smelled like my own sweat. The office felt like a place where secrets lived in the shadows. Somewhere, someone cleaned up people and evidence. I knew now that if I kept moving forward, I would be chasing a messy, dangerous truth. That night, I went back to the office to get personal things and to look for more proof. My old badge still worked in the confusion from the takeover. I walked the quiet halls as lights dimmed and the air smelled of copier ink. I told myself I'd only go to my old desk. But stubbornness has teeth. I opened the locked drawer of my manager's old cabinet. Hidden under notebooks, I found a USB stick labeled Q4 Recon. It felt warm, like it had wanted to be found. I almost left it there and walked out, but curiosity won. I slipped it into my pocket and turned toward the door. Then lights flicked on in the corridor and someone's shoes clicked on the tile. Security voices echoed. I froze and hugged the box I had brought. Footsteps came closer. My heart hammered as I slipped through a side exit and into the cool night. I drove away with the USB burning like a secret in my pocket. At home, I uploaded the USB to a secure cloud. It had spreadsheets with a column labeled personal, M. Reynolds. The payments were large and repeated. The wire references showed offshore trust memos and a beneficiary name that was a small change from Sophie's name. I took screenshots and felt a relief that was also fear. Then my laptop pinged. An internal alert flagged unusual downloads from my old account. Someone had noticed. My stomach sank. I had cameras in the building, and they might see me in the hall at dusk. I shut everything down and backed up the images to a separate drive. I scrolled through the spreadsheets twice to make sure they were clear. They showed payments tied to consultants who were not real consultants, but hotel bookings and personal travel. My head swam with numbers and names. I could not believe how much had been hidden in plain sight. I realized I had a fragile case and a dangerous enemy. I tried to take the documents to a board member who might care. Mark had already started to tell his story. I was a bitter ex-employee trying to sabotage. The message spread quietly like oil. But Anna, a former board member who had resigned awkwardly, burst into the trustee meeting and demanded to speak about that bank transfer. She produced a bank statement with a payment circled in red. The payment matched the one on my spreadsheet. The room grew quiet like the air before rain. Anna's hand trembled as she set the printout on the table. She said she had kept the statement because she felt it was dangerous to let it vanish. Her voice wavered as she said she had been asked to look the other way. The rest of the board shifted and looked at each other. I felt a flicker of hope. This was the first time someone with power had called the payments out loud. They could not ignore it now. Hours later, my LinkedIn blew up with people I did not know commenting about my firing. Mark had posted a polished video about strategic changes and hinted he was cleaning house. The message was slick, and it made my stomach twist. An investigative reporter named Darius reached out. He said he had been watching Mark's rise and needed proof of financial wrongs. He asked for documents that would survive legal scrutiny. I emailed him one encrypted screenshot. I felt shaky but resolute. Minutes later, a new threat email landed in my inbox. Stop or we will bury you. The timing was no coincidence. Fear sat heavy in my chest, but a different feeling rose, determination. I knew now that if I wanted the truth to come out, I would have to play a long game. I could not let threats scare me away. I locked the encrypted files and changed passwords. The world felt small and sharp, like glass in my hands. Darius called with a plan. He said it would take 4 weeks. He wanted bank trails, contractor proof, and witness statements. He warned that anyone close to Sophie could be dangerous. I felt the risk like a prick in my skin. Darius promised anonymity for sources and a careful timeline. He said, if this works, they will lose more than titles. The words rang in my head. I thought of the post-it, the hotel dates, and the offshore sweep. I agreed to the plan. Darius told me to collect public records, contractor details, and internal memos. He also asked me to keep my temp job as a cover. I nodded though he couldn't see me. I started making lists and hiding copies of the spreadsheets in several secure locations. The next morning, I felt like someone standing at the edge of water, ready to jump. I knew I could not turn back. I had to gather proof that would not crumble under pressure. Week 1, I traced contractor invoices. I found one for executive hospitality with an address in Marbella. The contractor's LinkedIn showed beaches and pictures of parties, not contracts. I called the listed contact. Someone answered with a thick accent and said, we do not deliver that to companies. The name on the bank transfer was the contractor's company, but the payment had flowed through an intermediary registered with Sophie's initials. My heart thudded. I mapped the villa's rental dates. They matched 2 of Mark's claimed team retreats. I took screenshots of the villa listing and the transfer trail. I felt a strange mix of disgust and relief. The dates and places fit like pieces of a map. I kept going. If the contractor was a shell, then the money went somewhere else. I started to find more small islands in the chain of payments. Each one pointed to the same place. I was building a path through a fog of invoices and hotel receipts. I filed an anonymous tip with a regulator and attached the transaction IDs. The regulator emailed back asking for more documents and proof of identity. If I revealed myself, Mark's lawyers could silence me. But if I stayed hidden, the regulator might not move. I felt trapped. Then I got a text. Olivia can't be trusted. The message was short and cold. I opened my messages and realized Olivia had sent me one file right before that text. I had not thought about the timing. Panic bubbled up in my throat. I questioned everything. Had Olivia set me up? Had she given copies to Mark? Had I walked into a trap? The fear changed my steps. I started to look over my shoulder. Friends asked how I was, and I lied smoothly. I deleted a note and saved another copy. I started to doubt who could help me and who would sell me out for safety. Olivia met me in a quiet coffee shop. Her face looked older than when I had last seen her. She told me she needed my files to protect her family because Sophie's cousin had offered her money. She had a folder of my emails and a stack of printouts. I felt sick. She said she had already given copies to Mark and warned me I would be framed for leaking. The words hit like cold rain. I asked why she had done it. She said she felt trapped and needed the money. She pushed the folder toward me. It felt like a hand grenade. I refused and told her she could not betray people like this. She shrugged in a tired way and left. On the table, she had scribbled a phone number on a sugar packet. I recognized the number. It was the same unknown number that had texted me to stop digging. My chest hurt. The world had started to look like a room where trust was bait. I had not been foolish enough to trust only one file. Weeks earlier, I had made decoy documents that looked bad, but were harmless. The real evidence was stored in a separate encrypted stash. I had expected betrayal and planned for it. When Olivia left with the decoy folder, I felt a cold relief. I emailed Darius the real bank reconciliations and the correspondence tying offshore accounts to Mark. He replied, "Meet me in 24. My mailbox dinged with a calendar invite. The host name listed was Mark.Reynolds. A chill ran through me. Who had sent the invite? I considered not going, but decided the meeting was part of a plan. I deleted the invite and told Darius the host name was suspicious. He said not to worry and to bring extra copies. I did not sleep that night. I thought of all the faces that could be watching. The risk felt like a weight I could barely carry. Darius published a careful expose. He redacted parts, kept names out where needed, and laid out a timeline. He included bank slips and contractor invoices. The stock dipped and panic spread. Mark denied everything in a polished statement and said he would sue. The board froze his signing authority while they ordered an independent audit. Investor chats heated up. My phone rang and an unknown voice said, "We can make this go away. Come to my office." The call came from inside the CEO suite. I felt like the walls were closing in. Mark's people were trying to quiet me. I told Darius and he advised me to keep quiet and stay with friends. The world outside seemed to be holding its breath. For a moment I thought the fight might end in nothing, but then the board announced it wanted an audit. The battle had moved from whispers to a public stage. The board called an emergency meeting. I was asked to attend as a witness because Anna insisted. Sophie sat across from me with a bored look. The treasurer handed me an envelope with meeting minutes showing a secret vote approving a multi-million consulting pool. The minutes were signed, but the signature looked forged. Someone in the room whispered that there was more evidence. I felt the air thicken. The finance director read the minutes out loud, and people shifted in their chairs. The room felt like a courtroom. I handed over my spreadsheets and the bank printouts I had collected. The board listened in a silence heavy with guilt and surprise. Anna slammed her palm on the table and demanded answers. I watched Mark's face change from smooth to tight. The game was no longer in his hands. He had to explain himself, and he had no easy answers. I felt a strange mix of fatigue and relief. That night a transfer was scheduled to move money to an offshore trust before auditors could freeze accounts. The finance director was pale and said he had been ordered by Mark to execute it immediately. Regulators had been tipped to watch transactions and had started to monitor accounts. While the board argued, a clerk burst in shouting that the bank had stopped the transfer. Mark slammed his fist on the table and barked into his phone, "Do it." The clerk pointed to her screen where the wire was pending again. For a terrifying minute it moved like a live animal between approval and hold. The room ordered the bank to hold any suspicious transfers. The clerk's hands shook so hard she spilled water on the table. The bank finally flagged the accounts for unusual activity. Mark looked like a man who had been reading his own funeral notice. Fear crept into his eyes in a way I had not seen before. That night, Sophie sent a private video to a staff chat saying she had signed invoices without reading them because Mark promised to handle fallout. The video leaked. In it, Sophie did not look proud. She looked terrified. The leak carried a watermark back to a contractor account, the same contractor listed on invoices and linked to the Marbella villa. People replayed the video and watched her face shrink with worry. She begged quietly in the clip and started to cry. The leak made Sophie human and powerless, and it made others see a thread leading to the villa and the contractor. I felt a small, sharp justice. The leak meant the world could see how small promises had created a monster. I thought of Priya and how her desk had been cleared. I thought of the offshore sweep that had almost happened. The tide had turned. People began to ask how far the scheme reached. Mark panicked. He ran to the server room to seize CCTV drives and HR backups. Security stopped him, but he fought and shouted, "Find the proof." In the scuffle, a legal-size envelope fell from his briefcase. It was labeled with his private email, and inside were printouts of conversations with a shadowy investment firm promising a quick buyout if he cleared books. Someone caught the moment on a phone and the clip spread quickly. Mark shouted that it was entrapment and that he had been framed. The more he struggled, the worse he looked. The clip showed a man caught in his own panic. The board could no longer pretend it was a small matter. The investment firm's promise to buy if books were cleaned showed motive. I felt a mixture of sorrow and relief. This was becoming bigger than a job or a firing. It was a deep rot that had to be cut out. The board suspended Mark and ordered a forensic audit. Regulators opened a probe and Mark tried to sell his shares overnight, but the buyer walked after due diligence found these same suspicious flows. Mark's personal accounts were frozen. He began to email the board with threats about revealing everything. Rumors spread about where Mark had gotten the money. I received messages from old colleagues asking the same question. When the audit found a pattern of payments to family members and shell companies, people gasped. The narrative shifted from corporate restructuring to fraud and kickbacks. Investors who had once cheered Mark demanded answers and restitution. My name came up in the audit discussions as a key witness. I felt oddly calm seeing the chain fall into place. The world had become a place where the truth could be tracked like footprints in snow. A whistleblower from Sophie's side produced screenshots showing payments to family and shell companies that fed back into the consulting pool. The forensic team linked payments and found kickbacks to board allies. The story changed from one person's greed to a network of corruption. People who had defended Mark now asked for restitution and resignations. Then I got a letter from the board inviting me to lead the integrity task force. They wanted someone honest to clean house and restore trust. The idea of leading this felt strange. I almost laughed at the audacity. They offered me a role and immunity paperwork. I read the contract and felt the weight of it. It was an offer to come back and fix the rot I had exposed. The choice felt like standing at a crossroad. I had leaned into this fight for truth, not for power. Still, I realized I could make a real difference. They wanted me back to lead reform. They promised public reconciliation, a clean slate for employees, and power to fire corrupt managers. I could have demanded money, apologies, or revenge. Instead, I thought of the file I had given Darius that began to claw back stolen funds to an employee relief fund. I had already started to undo the harm. Mark tried to leverage private board talks to save himself, but every move made new emails surface. Regulators told me they were building criminal referrals. I signed the task force papers but added a demand: full transparency and public disclosure of audit results. The board agreed reluctantly. I felt strange walking back into the building with paper that gave me authority. This was not revenge, it was repair. I wanted to give back to people who had been hurt. The work would be hard. I felt ready. Months later, I stood in the same boardroom where Mark had fired me. The forensic audit was public. Funds were being returned to affected employees, and prosecutors had filed charges. The gallery held Mark in a different light. No charm, no smile. Sophie sat with her head down. I watched Mark mouth words to Sophie and felt no pity. Then a petty and perfect scene arrived. Mark emailed me begging for work, asking to be rehired in a junior role. I printed his email and attached the public audit link. I placed the printout on the printer with one line underlined: "You were told to optimize." I walked to my new corner office, feeling an odd calm. The boardroom that once felt like a stage for humiliation now felt like a place of reckoning. I closed my new office door and listened to the click. The sound was small, but it sealed something. I left the past where it belonged and opened a door to the future.